Newsday continues here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. 3 bystanders, including a 4-year-old girl, who were injured in a shooting incident at Times Square in New York City. New York police reports that gunfire broke out at around 5 p.m. New York time, arising from a dispute between 2 to 4 people. However, those who were shot were mere bystanders and were not involved in the quarrel. The 3 victims were a 4-year-old girl in a stroller who was hit in the leg while her family was buying toys, a woman hit in the foot, and a tourist from Rhode Island who was shot in the leg. Here are other stories we are following across the world. Pope Francis expressed support for waiving intellectual property rights to COVID-19 vaccines. In a speech to a global fundraising concert to promote fair access to the vaccines, the Pope said the world is infected with, quote, the virus of individualism. This after the same proposal by U.S. President Joe Biden was rebuffed by some European nations, including France and Germany. In India, grieving relatives crowded outside of a mortuary, one of the hospitals in Ahmedabad, as they claimed the bodies of their loved ones who died of COVID-19. Relatives wept while waiting for the remains near the hospital as ambulances continue to arrive and depart, as the South Asian country accounted for nearly half of the COVID-19 infections worldwide and 25% of global deaths last week. Meanwhile, hundreds of people were seen partying last night in Spain after the country's 11 p.m. curfew was lifted in almost all of their regions. Recall that a state of emergency was imposed in the country last October, leading to the enforcement of a nationwide curfew and local travel bans. As these protocols came to an end, hundreds of young Madrid residents took to a square traditionally used to celebrate New Year's Eve to cheer freedom, dance, and drink with their friends. Many were seen maskless and not complying with social distancing. Reuters reports that Madrid has the second highest COVID-19 incidence rate in Spain at 318 cases per 100,000 people. Although Madrid ended the curfew, bars and restaurants will have to close at midnight, and regional leaders have reinforced police presence to prevent people from drinking in the streets. Biological differences between children and adults naturally lead to differences in vaccine dosages and reaction. Just how different will it be for children, and what are the expected guidelines for their inoculation? Andrew Pikash from Johns Hopkins tells us in this Bloomberg report.
Much of the biology of the immune system is incredibly different and very much dependent upon age. Even simple factors such as dosing based on body mass are all factors that have to be empirically determined. And that's why you see these clinical trials now that are focusing on children that are breaking down the age groups into smaller and smaller groups. Remember, adults were basically 17 and above, right? Right now we're going in age increments of about 4 or 5 years or so because of the challenges that are produced by trying to move into those populations with the limited amount of data that we have so far. So very important to get this right, because children represent a population that could really help us move toward a herd immunity sort of endpoint. But the studies that should be coming out next week are going to be very important in terms of understanding the dosing and the side effects in those populations.
And just to sort of tie a bow on this, if we do get those 12 to 16-year-old guidelines next week as expected, how quickly could we see kids start to get vaccinated, and perhaps how much does that accelerate the path to full immunity?
I think you can see vaccinations start almost immediately because the vaccine right now is out there. As we've all sort of been seeing, the vaccine demand is starting to diminish a little bit. And if we look at the initial rollout of the vaccine, my guess is that there'll be a large bolus of individuals who are very willing and want to get the vaccine that will line up very quickly. So I think that the rollout into children initially will be very fast and very high, and then it's really just then going to be a question of sustaining it and getting it to a high percentage, running into similar problems that we see now with the adult population.
Andy, what do you think the biggest issue is underpinning hesitancy at the moment?
I really do think it's getting the information to people in a way that they are comfortable understanding it. From a scientific standpoint, I really am amazed at the wonderful data that's coming out about these vaccines almost on a weekly basis right now. So the data is there. Communicating it effectively to populations is what's really important. And of course, getting at the issue of equity in vaccines finding the populations that don't have access to it, that haven't heard much about the benefits of the vaccine. Getting to those populations is going to be the really critical thing right now.
Dr. Pekosh, what do you think of New York City's decision to advocate for vaccine tourism, that basically if people come here to visit from other countries, they could get a vaccine and get first in line?
You know, more vaccinations are better, and everybody's trying to be, I think, creative about how to do this. You know, bringing someone into a country, vaccinating them, remember, your effect of the vaccine then takes several weeks before you can actually, you know, get the benefits of that. So the timing of some of these things is important. And again, we're allowed to do a lot when we're vaccinated, but we have to remember that it takes some time for a vaccine to actually get you your protection. And so that's, I think, the critical thing to remember as we roll out some of these policies that may allow for greater travel or greater access to vaccines for people who are non-residents.
The Agriculture Department is still studying the suggested retail price to be imposed on imported pork. Speaking to us earlier this morning, DA Secretary William Dar said that they will announce the SRP once the executive order has been signed. Dar added that there's no reason for local hog raisers to go on a pork holiday due to the lowered tariffs and increased volume for pork imports.
This is a temporary measure, and this will take effect once the EU is signed. They have been a part of the discussions before, so I don't know why, again, they're looking forward to that full holiday.
Dar also noted significant improvements on the containment of the African swine fever in the country. He said that over 300 ASF cases per month in average were reported over the past 4 months. The DA was also conducting trials on potential vaccines against the ASF.
The first 4 months of 2021, you have a total cases or incidence of 1,460, and divide that by 4 months, you have 365 incidents per month average. So this is 50% down. We are improving our monitoring and surveillance in this regard.
A lawmaker is seeking the mandatory registration of all prepaid SIM cards in the Philippines. Deputy Speaker for Trade and Industry, Wes Gatchalian, called for the immediate passage of House Bill number 5793. The measure is also known as the Subscriber Identity Module Card Registration Act, which he says will help authorities run after people behind fraudulent online activities. He cited the recent spike in fraudulent bookings and food delivery services among the illegal activities that the bill seeks to stop. He added that telecommunications firms, delivery riders, and the Trade Department support mandatory SIM card registration. Gatchalian also said that since under the bill, everyone purchasing a prepaid SIM card would be required to provide a valid ID, the proposed measure could also help eradicate text scams. MVP Group-backed athletes share inspiring lessons and values they got from their moms this Mother's Day. Olympian Hylin Diaz shared that she learned how to be thrifty, caring, and prayerful from her mother. Diaz came from a humble family in Zamboanga, but that did not deter her from achieving her goals in life, as she always has her parents supporting her. PLDT home fiber hitter Rhea de Maculangan shared that her mom taught her to love God above all and to be always humble. Her teammate Isa Molde said that her mother taught her to value the time spent with loved ones and to treat people with respect and kindness. Finally, volleyball athlete Maria Shola Alvarez shared that she learned to love her siblings dearly and at the same time instilled in her the values of being dependent and generous from her mom. With that, happy Mother's Day to all of our heroes. And those are the top stories of the hour. Join us later at 1 p.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on Signal Play. Register for a free account at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.